right, I will be telling you a little bit about our new cameras and lenses products, and I'll start first with the success of the Alexa camera. As you know, we introduced the Alexa last year in June. Since then, we have shipped thousands of cameras. We're very, very pleased. It has completely changed the industry. And the reason is really for four of the main parameters of the Alexa. It's the image quality, the workflow, the product quality, and the simplicity of use. Those were the four things we wrote on a piece of paper at the very beginning of the project, and I'm happy to say those are also the things that have carried us through and that were the foundations of the success of this camera. Now, there have been a large number of projects shot with the Alexa right now. The cameras are still in high demand. We're catching up, but still we have a back order of Alexa cameras. And I was talking to a camera assistant recently here in Amsterdam, and he was saying in all of Holland you can't rent an Alexa camera right now because they're all out, they're all working. Some of these shows here I'd like to point out in more detail. Anonymous was directed by Roland Emmerich. The Cirque du Soleil is a show that Cameron Pace Group did with Alexas and Allura Zooms. Same with Killer Joe, that's a show with the DP Caleb Deschanel. Also, he was using Alexa cameras and Allura Zooms, and you can see it just goes on and on and on. I could be sitting here dropping names for a long time, but since that's not that exciting, we'll continue on with the Alexa Studio, and that to us is very, very exciting because in a way it harkens back to our history of film cameras. The Alexa Studio is an Alexa that has a rotating mirror shutter built in, just like all our film cameras have. And that rotating mirror shutter does two things. First of all, whenever the sensor is taking light on, the shutter is open, and then the shutter closes down, and while the shutter is covering the sensor, we're reading out the sensor. And what that means is the Alexa Studio has no rolling shutter artifact. Now that is an artifact that all digital cameras have, and we've been able to minimize it greatly in the Alexa. It really hasn't been a big issue, but it's completely absent in the Alexa Studio. Second of all, the mirror shutter reflects the light from the lens up into the optical viewfinder. And that's the bit that all the cameramen, all the operators and cinematographers get very excited about. Because an optical viewfinder, in contrast to an electronic viewfinder, has no delay. You see what is happening right in front of the camera, right when it is happening. In addition, it's the best way to judge focus, and it works without power. So the crew comes on the set, they set up the tripod, they put their camera on the tripod, and immediately the DP can start lighting through the camera, they can start blocking the scene, rehearsing, doing whatever needs to be done without having to wait for power to come, for the monitors to come, and that's going to be a really, really great improvement on the set. Now, if you are in a really dark situation, or you want to use the camera beyond 60 frames a second, you can replace the optical viewfinder with the electronic viewfinder. It's an either-or proposition. One or the other can be placed on the camera. And the optical viewfinder is also compatible with our existing accessories. For instance, we have the 435 eyepieces here. We have 435 extensions, but with an adapter you can also attach the ARRI Studio extensions or the ARRI Studio eyepiece to this viewfinder. Now the viewfinder, there's one version of the viewfinder, and that's the version that also has an anamorphic D-squeeze built in, and that comes in two flavors. There's your regular 2x anamorphic D-squeeze, and then a 1.3 anamorphic D-squeeze for the 1.3 anamorphic lenses. The sensor of this camera is the same sensor we're using in all the Alexa cameras. However, we're using more vertical height in this camera. So while the other Alexa cameras can only be run in the 16:9 mode, which you see on top here, the Alexa Studio can be run in 16:9 mode if you want to match another Alexa, but it can also be run in 4:3 mode. It's the same width image on the sensor, but we're using more of the vertical space. That is great for anamorphic shows. If you look at the red square here, that represents the image you would take from the sensor for a CinemaScope show, and you can clearly see, I think it's about 56% more surface area there in the 4:3 mode than in the 16:9 mode. So this is the perfect camera for high-end anamorphic shows. Even if you're shooting with spherical lenses, the extra height gives you the ability to reposition your images vertically. So if you have a microphone in the shot, you can just nudge it down a little bit and get rid of that microphone. The Alexa Studio comes fully loaded It has all the features of the Alexa Plus, plus it has the high-speed license built in, and it has the anamorphic D-squeeze built in. Available in December. It'll cost 92,900 euros, and it's available in a packet with some extra bits and bobs and cables and 5 cards. Right now we have the first prototypes here, one on the show, and there's a number of high-end feature films that are being tested by the TPs, and we've gotten really, really positive feedback so far. This brings me to the next camera, the Alexa M, the little sister. Alexa M is an Alexa that's chopped in 2 pieces. There's a head and there's a body piece connected with a fiber optic cable that can be 50 meters if you carry power through the cable, or a kilometer if you power the head separately. The Alexa M is designed for action shots, aerial shot, underwater photography, Steadicam, and also for 3D. It's the same quality, same sensor, same workflow, same ARRI product quality as all the other Alexa cameras. And we have working prototypes right now. There's one on the show. And we also have a partnership with the Cameron Pace Group, and they will get a number of these Alexa prototypes, and they will put them on shows, and we're working with them. We've been working with them on the design of this camera. We're also working with them on the continuing development of this camera until we have the product, which will probably be at the end of the first quarter of 2002. We're shooting for around 60,000 euros sales price. However, that'll depend on the feedback we're getting from the field and what other features we still have to include. Now, as I said, we work closely with the Cameron Pace Group on this, and they're coming out with a new 3D rig, a compact rig that is designed specifically for the Alexa M camera. We have that rig at our booth. We were showing it yesterday at the big screen. Also, the M is great for underwater photography. A lot of helicopter people have approached us, and that's just great. Now, I just have to mention also that the M is also being used with a European Union project called Fascinate, and for anyone who's interested, that really means format-agnostic, script-based interactive experience. And it took an engineer to come up with that. Their goal is to have a high-resolution television service, and they're using 3 Alexa M cameras together for a panoramic camera by the Fraunhofer Institute. If you're curious about this, Hall 8, booth G44, there's our engineer, Dr. Johannes Steurer, who could tell you more about that. I promised him I'll stick that slide in. All right, ARRI RAW. The Alexa camera has been a big success, partially because we're working closely together with Apple Computer, and we implemented their ProRes codec into the Alexa camera. All versions of the ProRes codec, from the smallest file size all the way up to ProRes 444, and that has really helped the Alexa camera along. ProRes is a wonderful technology, and the Alexa is still the only camera, it's a unique solution in the industry that does that. On the other hand, we also have the ARRI RAW format, which is an uncompressed, uncompromised, unencrypted file format. It's really the highest image quality you can get out of the Alexa, and we introduced that at NAB in a new version, and since then it's really taken off. There are a number of high-end productions that are using ARRI RAW to record the footage. Now, the ProRes you can record in the camera. For ARRI RAW, you need an extra recorder on top, and we're working with a number of recorder manufacturers, one of them being Codex, and we're reselling also the Codex recorder. And there's a special version of the Codex recorder called the ARRI RAW recorder, which, surprisingly enough, records ARRI RAW. And we just lowered the price of that from 16,000 euros to 11,500 euros. So recording ARRI RAW on the Alexa has just gotten less expensive. We're also working with other partners who are doing very quick downloading of the ARRI RAW data, and we will come up with GPU rendering, which means much, much faster debayering in post. We're working on certifications for ARRI RAW recorders, as well as for post software and hardware that processes ARRI RAW, and anybody who has gotten our specifications, implemented it in their product, and then sends us their product for testing, we will give them one of these 2 labels for their product. And this brings me to the look files. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people like to shoot in ProRes 4x4 with log C. However, the log C image is a very low contrast flat image that tends to freak out the directors. In order to show the director an image that looks like it would look after color correction, you can now use an ARRI look file. It's a small file. We have a macOS application that allows you to create that file, goes in the camera, and then it can be chosen which camera output this look file applies to. So you can use it to show the director what the image will look like after color correction, or if you're working on a television show and you need the images really quickly with the look you want, you can also choose to bake in the look. Either way is possible. We're also working on 120 frames a second for the Alexa, and there again the quality of the ProRes codecs really helps us, because that allows us to go beyond high definition frame rates. The high speed is a license we're selling for 1,350 euros, can be installed in any Alexa camera, and with this license you can go 60 to 120 frames a second for the Apple ProRes codec up to ProRes 422HQ. Same image quality, we're using the same sensors, same sensor area. However, you do need to use the new 64 gigabyte Sony cards. These cards are have twice the capacity, but also twice the recording data rate, so they allow us to record 120 frames a second. We're selling the license, we're also selling the license with a 3-pack of the cards, and then in January, when we get more cards, we will start selling the cards on their own as well as a 5-pack. And if you do a little math, you'll see that the 5-pack gets you a much better deal on the cards than buying individual cards. Moving on to the new software update we have for the Alexa, we're tirelessly working on improving the camera. We're getting a lot of feedback from the field. As I said, thousands of cameras means thousands of customers who have a great idea what we can improve. And we literally have weekly meetings during which we look at all the feedback and we prioritize what do we need to do next, what goes in the next software update. The next software update will come out in October. It's the prerequisite for the high-speed license, and it includes the capability to output ARRI RAW at 60 frames a second, as well as HDSDI at 60 frames a second. Now, we've come up with a proprietary protocol to output these formats, and Codex has already implemented that in their Codex onboard recorder, and I'm sure other recorder manufacturers will follow. It'll include ARRI look files not only when you're recording, but also for playback now, test signals. It'll support the lens data display, which is this guy here, that shows you the information from the lens, reeling clip numbers in the monitor out, and a number of other features that'll allow third-party manufacturers to hook into the camera and remotely communicate the camera from an iPad, from an iPhone. That's a new initiative we're starting called the Open Camera Access Initiative, because we know we're great at designing cameras and lenses, and there's a lot of other people who have great ideas about iPhone apps that talk to the camera, and we want to create a clean interface, allow these people to create their apps, and make them part of the whole Alexa ecology. Marketing materials, we have a lot of new marketing materials for the Alexa. However, you have most of that in your bag, so I won't dwell on this, and I'll move straight on to the lenses.